Okay, next up is the Anedio D2. Now, again, let's flip it around and start at the back. This one's going to be quick. There's not a lot to it. It's very straightforward. There's your balanced outputs, single-ended outputs. Usual plethora of inputs, Toslink optical. You have two SPDIF inputs, your more regular RCA and your less common but better BNC input, and a USB high-res input. Now this one's a little bit interesting, as for the D1 DAC they made a good quality USB to SPDIF adapter, and that good quality adapter is inside the unit, sitting, as you can see, above the main board and above the other inputs. And it's a pretty good quality unit. I actually, one of my gripes about reviews I read on the net and in magazines is that people say, oh, the USB input was much better than the others with my bazillion-dollar transport, and I have to say the bazillion-dollar transport must be rubbish, because I hear exactly the opposite with my Audiofilio, which costs much less than their bazillion-dollar transport. But actually the USB input on these is really fantastic. This is my preferred input for use with the D2. Round to the front, and the usual story here, which I shall show you with power, otherwise you might be able to see what's going on. Input selector, 4 inputs. Headphone socket, so there you go, headphones again. Straightforward deal there. And your volume control, which is digitally controlled as well. This little red light you see on the top will turn to green when there's a proper input connected. So if you know your input's locked on by that, you'll hear a click. This volume control is both analog and digital, and part of it's analog, part of it's digital. I guess it's digital for part of it and then analog for the rest, so you don't lose too much bandwidth and sound quality. And 99 steps again, so if you want to use it just as a DAC and no volume control, set it to 99. And that's pretty much it for the Anedio. The other thing is its remote control, which is a Sony universal remote, pre-programmed. Again, I've got to stand in front of this one to make it work. Volume. You can dial the volume directly with this, so if I want 45, if I dial it quickly, it'll switch down very fast. Even mute will go down to 0, and it ramps down very evenly. So that's a good piece of kit. And of course you can select the input as well if you're using multiple inputs. So, straightforward piece of kit with big buttons. And that is the Anedio in a nutshell. Sound-wise, of course, I found it has a very kind of open and clear sound. If you look on their website, they provide copious measurements showing how wonderful it is. But probably my impression of it is very wide and open sound. It seemed, and this is not a reflection of frequency response, it seemed like the bass was a bit light, and it's like if you move far back into a concert hall, the bass, you're not as close, so that the bass doesn't come through as strongly, and it's that kind of impression. It felt very kind of open and clear, and less of a kind of warmer sound that, say, my Master 7 has. Though it had a kind of flat and open sound straight out of the wall without plugging it into my power conditioner, I felt and then in comparing with the other DACs, it did sound a little bit kind of through listening to Amber Rubath, her voice sounded a bit forward and kind of a little bit aggressive. So it wasn't as smooth as my Master 7 or the Invicta. But say on the other hand, if you compare to the NFB 10ES2, whereas drums sounded like whack out of the NFB 10ES2, out of this there was more a more open and clear sound and more detail to each, each note out of an instrument, like drums, for example, is a really good example. There was a start and the end to the note, where there was less of that with the Audio GD unit. So, if you're after a kind of very clear sounding DAC with good value and the headphone output, is very adequate with everything from IEMs up to orthodynamics. If you pop open the top of the unit, you can put in some jumpers to jump the power up of the headphone output if you really want more power out of your headphones. It's not going to replace, obviously, a full-size amp as much as, you know, but for an all-in-one unit, especially with fairly sensitive headphones, it is quite fantastic and quite a good piece of kit. So I probably recommend it with something like, you know, the Fostex TH900, which are already very bassy headphones. That kind of match is going to be good. I've been using this again in my living room with the Emotivas, and that was maybe a little bit too thin sounding for me because the Emotivas only go down to about 50 Hertz and don't have that deep bass, and they are fairly flat and neutral sounding as well. So in some ways it was a little bit too much of a good thing, especially with the ribbon tweeters. If you're the kind of person who wants a DAC with, say, a big bassy tube amp, then this might be a good match. I used it with a Wu Audio WA7 and it provided a nice, which is a clearer sounding amp than it may give the impression for its value to be, but it did pair really quite well with this because it does sound a little bit bassy. So anyway, on to the next one.